The room is still. The air hangs heavy with expectation, with the unspoken weight of the stories we carry inside us, the battles we fight when the lights go out. Today, I want to tell you a story. Not a story of easy victories or charmed lives, not a tale of unbroken success. I want to tell you about the man who lost everything. Everything. And still, he did not quit. Imagine him. Let's call him Thomas. Not because it matters, but because a name makes him real. Makes him one of us. Thomas wasn't born into tragedy. His life for decades was woven from threads of ordinary contentment. A loving wife, Sarah, whose laughter was the sunrise of his everyday. 2 children, bright sparks of chaos and wonder, filling their modest home with the beautiful, messy symphony of growing up. A job he'd poured his soul into for 20 years. Not glamorous, but solid. Respected, it provided, it gave purpose. He had friends, a community, the quiet rhythm of belonging. He had a future painted in familiar, comforting colors. Graduations, anniversaries, grandchildren, retirement sunsets shared with Sarah. Then the cracks began. Small fissures at first, barely noticeable. A strange fatigue Sarah couldn't shake. A persistent ache dismissed as stress. But the fissures widened with terrifying speed. The diagnosis was a sledgehammer blow delivered in a sterile, fluorescent-lit room. Aggressive, relentless. The vibrant woman, the heart of their home, was fading before his eyes. He watched, helpless, as the disease stole her strength, her color, the light in her eyes. He mortgaged their future for treatments that offered only cruel slivers of borrowed time. He held her hand as she took her last shuddering breath, the silence that followed echoing in the hollowed-out cavern of his soul. Sarah was gone, the anchor of his life ripped away. The ground beneath Thomas, already trembling, gave way completely. Grief is a solitary ocean, vast and terrifying. He drowned in it. The world became muted, colors leaching away. The children's laughter now felt like shards of glass against his raw nerves. He couldn't connect. He was adrift in a fog of unbearable pain. Work became impossible. How could he focus on spreadsheets and deadlines when the center of his universe had collapsed? His absence, his distraction, his palpable despair became a problem. The company he'd given his loyalty to, his prime years, offered condolences. And then, with corporate efficiency, offered him the door, the job, his identity, his financial security, gone, shattered like glass. The dominoes kept falling. The bills from Sarah's illness, monstrous and unpayable, devoured their savings, then devoured the equity in their home. The bank's letters were cold, final. He packed their lives, the children's drawings still stuck to the fridge, Sarah's perfume faintly clinging to a scarf, into boxes stacked in a cheap, cramped apartment that smelled of stale air and defeat. The house, the walls that held their memories, their love, their future dreams, gone, reduced to a line item on a foreclosure notice. Friends, initially rallying with casseroles and awkward hugs, drifted away. His grief was too heavy, too uncomfortable. His circumstances too bleak. The invitations stopped. The phone calls dwindled to silence. The community he thought he belonged to seemed to recede, leaving him isolated on an island of despair. Dignity eroded with every rejection letter, every worried look from his children, every sleepless night staring at a stained ceiling. He felt the judgmental stares, the unspoken whispers. What happened to him? He was becoming invisible, a ghost haunting the edges of his own life. Then came the final, almost gratuitous blow. A small nest egg, painstakingly salvaged, hidden away in a desperate attempt to claw back some footing, some hope for the children. Entrusted to a friend with a sure-thing investment, it vanished. Pooh. Like smoke. Stolen by betrayal, by greed, by the universe's seemingly infinite capacity to inflict pain. He sat on the floor of that awful apartment, the final bank statement in his trembling hand. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. No wife, no home, no job, no savings, dwindling friends. Only the crushing responsibility of 2 grieving children looking, to him, their broken father, for answers he didn't have. for strength he couldn't find. The abyss yawned before him, vast and dark and seductive. The thought of simply stopping, of letting go, felt like the only relief possible from the unrelenting agony. To quit, to surrender to the void. The temptation was a physical ache, a siren song promising an end to the torment. He stood on that precipice. He looked down into that darkness. He felt its cold breath. He held the crushing weight of everything lost. The love, the security, the identity, the future, all ashes. Why fight? What was left to fight for? Who would even care if he just vanished? But then, something stirred. Not a grand epiphany, not a bolt of lightning. It was a whisper, a fragile, almost imperceptible tremor deep within the ruins. It came from the memory of Sarah's hand in his, not in sickness, but in life. Her quiet strength when he had faltered years before. It came from the sight of his son, trying bravely to tie his shoes, his small face a mask of concentration, oblivious to the world collapsing around him. It came from his daughter, silently placing a crude drawing of their old house with all four of them smiling under a yellow sun, on his lap. The sheer, defiant innocence of that hope. It came from the raw, animal instinct buried beneath the layers of despair, the instinct to protect, to persist even when reason screamed it was futile. Quitting wasn't relief. Quitting wasn't an end to pain. It was passing that unbearable weight, that legacy of utter defeat onto his children. It was confirming the world's darkest suspicions. It was letting the loss win completely, extinguishing the last flicker of what Sarah had loved, what he once was. Quitting wasn't an option, not truly, not for them. So Thomas didn't jump. He didn't surrender. He took a step back. Just one, then another. Not towards victory, not towards glory, but simply away from the edge. He got up off the floor. What followed wasn't heroic. It wasn't glamorous. It was the grinding, humbling work of scraping rock bottom. He swallowed mountains of pride. He took a job far beneath his experience, his dignity, stacking shelves overnight in a cavernous, fluorescent supermarket. The pay was meager, the hours brutal, the work soul-crushingly monotonous. His body ached, his mind screamed, but it was a paycheck. It bought bread. It paid the rent on the terrible apartment for one more month. He learned to stretch pennies until they screamed. He learned the shame of food banks, the bureaucratic maze of social services, the exhaustion of constant calculation. He faced the pity, the indifference, sometimes the outright scorn of a world that moves fast and has little time for the broken. He came home exhausted, smelling of cardboard and cleaning chemicals, to children who needed homework help, who needed reassurance he could barely muster, who needed a father who wasn't hollowed out by grief and exhaustion. He failed. Often, he snapped. He wept in the shower, the sound drowned out by the water, so they wouldn't hear. He sat at their tiny table, pushing food he couldn't afford around his plate, pretending he wasn't hungry so they could eat more. The guilt was a constant companion, a gnawing beast. He was failing them, just as he felt he had failed Sarah, but he kept showing up, night after grueling night at the store, day after weary day for his children. He learned to find microscopic moments of grace, a shared joke with his daughter over burnt toast, his son's small hand slipping trustingly into his on a walk, the quiet satisfaction of a bill paid, however barely. He started talking haltingly to a counselor offered through a community program. It didn't fix the pain, but it gave him words for the void inside, making it slightly less terrifying. He found a free support group for grieving parents, sitting in a church basement with others whose worlds had also shattered. He realized he wasn't uniquely cursed. He saw his own pain reflected, and in that reflection, a flicker of connection, of shared humanity, sparked. He wasn't alone, on the island. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, like a plant forcing its way through concrete, something began to grow within him. Not happiness, that felt like a distant foreign country, but resilience, a deep, hard-won understanding of his own capacity to endure. He learned that hitting rock bottom doesn't mean you stop. It means you finally know where you stand, and the only direction left is up, even if up is just crawling an inch at a time. He discovered reserves of strength he never knew he possessed, forged in the furnace of absolute loss. He learned humility, true humility, stripped of pretense. He learned the profound value of a single act of unexpected kindness, a coworker covering his shift when his son was sick, a neighbor leaving a bag of groceries anonymously at the door. These weren't solutions. They were lifelines, reminders that goodness existed even in the bleakest landscape. Years passed. The raw, jagged edges of grief softened, not disappearing but integrating into the fabric of who he was. The relentless clawing poverty eased, incrementally. He found a slightly better job, then another. He moved his family to a slightly less terrible apartment, then finally, miraculously, into a small rented house. It wasn't their house, but it had a yard where the kids could play. He saw his children grow, scarred by the loss, yes, but also tempered by it. They saw their father broken, yes, but they also saw him refuse to stay broken. They saw him get up every single time he was knocked down. They saw him choose them, choose life, choose to fight another day, even when every instinct screamed to lay down and die. That lesson, imprinted not in words but in the relentless, grinding action of his perseverance, was the greatest inheritance he could give them. Thomas never got his old life back. That was gone forever, a beautiful, irretrievable shipwreck. He didn't become rich or famous. He still bears the scars, physical from the relentless work, emotional from the searing losses. He still has days where the weight feels crushing, where the memories bring him to his knees. But he rebuilt a life forged in the crucible of utter devastation, a life built not on what he had, but on who he chose to be in the face of losing it all. He is the man who lost everything, and still, he did not quit. Look around you. Look at the faces in this room. How many Thomases are here? How many have faced their own abyss? The loss might not be the same. It could be health, a dream, a relationship, faith, security, reputation. But the feeling? That crushing weight of everything slipping away? That seductive whisper of surrender? That terrifying void? That, I suspect, is a language many here understand. Thomas's story isn't remarkable because he triumphed gloriously over adversity. It's remarkable because he endured it. It's remarkable because he found a reason, however small, however fragile, the memory of a smile, the trust in a child's eyes, the sheer stubborn refusal to let the darkness win, to take one more step, just one, and then another. His victory isn't in what he regained, but in what he refused to relinquish, his humanity, his responsibility, his choice to fight. He discovered that hitting rock bottom isn't the end of the story, it's the brutal beginning of a new one. He learned that resilience isn't about never falling. It's about the deafening sound your spirit makes when it drags itself back up, inch by agonizing inch on shattered knees. We live in a world obsessed with winning, with acquisition, with the unbroken ascent. We celebrate the meteoric rise, the flawless victory. But Thomas's story whispers a deeper, more essential truth. The most profound courage, the most awe-inspiring strength, is often found not in the winner's circle, but in the quiet, desperate struggle of the one who refuses to be counted out. It's found in the man or woman staring into the abyss of total loss and whispering, hoarsely, defiantly, "No, not today." That refusal, that simple, monumental act of not quitting, it changes everything. It rebuilds worlds, not from bricks and mortar, but from grit and tears and an unbreakable will. It proves that the human spirit, even when fractured, even when stripped bare, possesses an indomitable core. A core that can be bent, bruised and battered, but never truly broken, as long as it chooses to keep beating, to keep fighting, to keep living. So if you are in the falling, if you feel the ground giving way, if you stand on your own precipice staring into the void, remember Thomas. Remember the man who lost everything. Remember the deafening silence of his loss, the crushing weight of his despair. But remember most of all the quiet, earth-shattering sound of his spirit, choosing not to quit. Let that sound echo in your own darkness. Let it be the lifeline you grasp. Choose to take one step back from the edge, then another. Your abyss is real. Your pain is valid. But so is your strength. So is your choice. Choose to endure. Choose to fight. Choose to rebuild, however small the stones you have to build with. Because the world needs your story, not just of what you lost, but of how, against all reason, against all odds, you stayed. You are the author. Write the next line. Write, and still, I did not quit.